Andrew Douglas, brother, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, man. It's been a while.
It has. I, I think it's been about, man, like 13 or 14 years probably.
At least, yeah.
Yeah,
I,
because
I was just a little kid when when we met.
you were a little kid, and also you were a resident, I think at the time
Yeah.
when um, yeah, man. So walk me through kind of what you've been doing since then in the ride you've been on.
Yeah. So I mean, if you asked me when I was a kid what I was going to be when I was older, it was going to be a firefighter, and I achieved that dream, and it was a great career. And since January or February, technically, um, I ended up walking away from the job to focus on myself and my family. And right now, we moved down to Costa Rica and have a farm down there, which has been a really fun experience. And now, currently, I'm just retraining myself to go into a different career field from the fire department. So,
Awesome,
yeah, life's been
awesome.
crazy.
Yeah, man. And I want to dig into that new career as well, and
For
also
sure.
Costa Rica. So, yeah, so when in that 13, 14-ish years,
Hmm.
you were a resident and now you're in Costa Rica. And so there's a massive amount of time in there. And I want to walk through that and a
For
little
sure,
bit,
yeah.
So what year did you get hired?
So I got hired in, let's see. So my son was born 2013, July of 2013 is when I got hired. I got hired out in Mason County, it's a small town in Washington State. Um, great department for learning, and they had sponsored me to go through school to become a paramedic, which was at that point my dream was to become a paramedic. I loved being a firefighter as well, but I also loved giving back to our community and away medically, and yeah, I just really enjoyed. That was my dream since I was a kid. Like I said before, like I remember in kindergarten going to the fire station, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then, that's every boy's dream. And then, I was lucky in middle school to meet a family friend who was a fire captain up in Lake Stevens, Washington. And they invited me in with open arms, and it drew me to the fire service because it's like a family. It was, you're living with brothers and sisters basically, and your dad is your battalion chief, as I called my battalion chief. Before I left. So yeah, I was just drawn by the family, and it was a really cool experience. And then I started out as a resident, like you said, and then kind of had a gap with had some growing up to do, and as we all do
Yeah,
as a
yeah, for
18,
sure.
20-year-old kid, and then came back in 2013, got hired. Yeah.
Yeah, and you switch stations though or departments, correct?
Yeah, so I spent 4 or 5 years at Mason County, and then I went over to West Pierce, um, which is located in University Place in Lakewood, Washington, and spent about 5 years there. It's a completely different um, animal in itself as far as providing service to a community. Um, Larger population, a lot busier, more, I would say, more frequency of high stress events than out in Mason County, which I could have slept all night if I had stayed there for a career.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And and so and you became a paramedic. Did you
Yep. I
become
went to,
did you become a paramedic while at Mason County?
yeah, so basically, I maybe rewind a little bit. So I'd been that resident when we first met. After that, I left to go with my now current wife. I guess you could say I went to a growing up phase, which I don't. My wife says I never grew up, so but I feel like I did. So I left there, became like a school bus driver at like 21 years old, and that was actually probably besides the fire service one of my favorite jobs. It was a blast.
Dude, wait,
Um,
Andrew, the school bus driver. I didn't know
at
about that,
20
man.
21. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So then I came back. I had this calling to come back to the fire service, and so we came back, got married, and then I started volunteering again at Mason County. At what point they said, "Hey, we'd like to send you through paramedic school." So,
Awesome. And then, so, but you made a switch from your dream job as a kid, something that you went back to, took a break from, went back to. You talk about family and the good experiences that you had, but you made the change. So, talk us through what that change was about.
and just to clarify, we're talking about going to Mason County
Well,
from when I left
no.
before.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, no, you are now in Costa Rica. You walked
Oh
away.
yeah.
You walked
Okay,
away
yeah.
from.
I
Yeah.
see where we're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the good stuff.
Walk. Yeah. The good stuff. Yeah. You walked away from your dream job. Um, yeah. I would like to know more about that.
I mean, it hurts still talking about it. Honestly, man, it was. Yeah, it was. It. I loved it. I mean, it was my life. Unfortunately, and I say that in the light of the fire service, right? I think for me, what the fire service, reflecting back on where I'm at now, is the fire service for me was a family that I was seeking, right? And
Mm,
I think there's a lot of firefighters, throughout the world that probably struggle with this because it is a family. So it was not only walking away from a job I loved, walking away from people I love too. But at the end of the day, I had to walk away. I spent about 3 or 4 years struggling with PTSD on and off. Um, and with that, it was just I was not at the very end. I was just not functioning as a human being, right? More importantly, I wasn't functioning as a father. I wasn't functioning as a husband that I should be, um, because of a job. And so I had to take a step back and really really look at myself, my family, life, and say, okay, it is just a job. This isn't my life. The fire service doesn't define who I am as a person. It's a great career with great people, but it doesn't define you as a person. And I really had to. I guess I'm still trying to figure out who I am as a person now after all that struggle. Um, I miss it, but I wouldn't turn back and wouldn't do anything differently. I think ultimately at the end of the day, our families are what we really have. Our kids, our wives, those people that are close to you are super important, and you can't throw away that for a job that when you walk away, nobody's. I mean, it's going to keep on grinding.
oh yeah.
I did a ton of work for the union as well, both at Mason and West Pierce. Um, and again, that was filling this void in me that needed this acceptance and family, right? That because I gave it everything, um, but at the sacrifice of my family, and I guess I just needed to start taking care of myself. Number one, because I can't care for my kids or be a good dad if I'm struggling, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not eating, if I'm sitting in my room all day. That stuff's just not in what I want for my kids. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Man, there's goodness sakes, there's so much to unpack here, to unpack
there's a
here.
lot. Yeah.
And but I mean, but first I want to just commend you. I mean, you did something that a lot of men especially can't do, which is to say that what I am doing right now is not does not define who I am. It did at the time, right? It was where
Hmm.
you wrapped your identity in, and a lot of people do in the fire service, which comes with a cost when things go sideways
Absolutely.
because you lose who you are. One of the things in my department that I am honored to be a part of is our peer support program, which is,
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
recognizing those things and trying to help people before they get to the PTSD spot, or thinking about ending their life, or their career is going down the drain, and they don't have a Costa Rica in their future.
Hmm.
So, I mean, for you to say that I don't want to find my identity in this, and I am a father and a husband first, and I also they need their dad and their husband to be fully present, and you couldn't be. So, amen to you, brother. I mean, that is some hard work, man. And but
It
yeah,
took me a long time to get there. It was a, you know, and I hate to jump around on you, but like kind
no,
of that decision took a long time. It took like over a year for me, because I went through a period where it was not good, um, and so I mean, I was to the point where, like you were talking about, guys that get close to death, and that was me. Um, yeah, I mean, I was in my room for days on end, couldn't come out, couldn't function, couldn't sleep, horrible dreams, any screaming, like that kind of stuff would set me off. And so I ended up going to a place called Deer Hollow, which is an inpatient, and it was really awesome because it was there was people, normal citizens, but there was also military, police, and fire there, which we all kind of have, we're similar blood, I would say.
yes,
Um, and so kind of from that point was like I realized, like, everybody's like, dude, don't do it. Don't go back. And I'm like, no, I'm going back. And so I got to back to work as fast as I could when I got out, which was um, a mistake, I would say, in a way, on my end. Um, and also, I had to just suffer and feel the pain of realizing that this isn't for me anymore. And so it took me a while to like finally admit it to myself. Like, reflecting back, it's easy to say like, oh yeah, you were done then, dude. Like, but the reality is it took me like a year to come that decision.
yeah. So, what was it a call? Was it a multitude of calls that led to your PTSD? Was it something that you came into the fire service with?
No, so like, I mean, so again, that kind of like wraps back into this year period, or when I went to Deer Hollow, learning things about myself, and kind of opening up and being vulnerable that I'd never been before, right? So for me, I wouldn't say I had PTSD or anything, but I think that your childhood does reflect on you as an adult. And so, like I had said before, I kind of had been seeking that like family feeling. And so I found that in the fire service and the union. I found something that I was passionate about, and um, I was. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. You're gonna have to edit that.
No,
um,
no, it's all right, brother.
no, this is a lot. No, this is definitely stuff I haven't talked really with anybody about. So it's good, and it's also it's stressful in a way too. But yeah, I mean, I sorry, dude.
No, that's okay, man. We can stop or go whenever you want.
Ask the question again. Sorry.
No, so I just was wondering, um, I was just wondering if the fire service was the origin
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
of your. No, it's truly all right if that was the origin of your road in mental health. But I did pick up on the before, and I had wrote down about seeking family.
For
And,
sure. Yeah.
oftentimes when are, when there's times when we have holes in our childhood growing up, or things
Hmm.
that we just weren't given. So how was can we talk about your childhood? Do you
Yeah,
feel
for sure. Yeah.
get comfortable with that? I mean, what was your upbringing like? And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, I think on the outside, I lived the great American dream of playing football, baseball, right? Everything's great, and then you throw in everything on the outside looks great, and it's not always right. For me, like my dad worked a lot, right? And traveled a lot for business, so he wasn't around. He wasn't at my game, so that kind of I think that left and he's trying to support our family and do all this stuff, and I get that. Um, and at the same time, it affected me as a kid, and that's where I found the fire service of filling that hole. Um, so I mean, I grew up as what you would say is a normal
right,
life,
right,
right? And my sister was older than me, so I was alone a lot. Um, and so that's kind of like a comfortable place for me. I think that's why I tend to retreat to my bedroom or go by myself, because I know that I can survive.
right.
Um,
There's comfort and safety in that. That's where you were able to find safety and comfort growing up, correct?
for sure, yeah.
Yeah,
I figured out how to entertain myself. I figured out how to learn. Um, and I think I'm not alone. I think there's a lot of people out there that have have grown up with similar situations. And I think it's when you really take a different perspective of looking at, like, oh wait, that definitely affected my decision getting into the fire service, which then led me to my trauma, um, which is unfortunately inevitable in the line of business that we do. But I didn't have healthy. I was never taught ways of being able to shed that stress, and I think that's really where where it boils down to is you can't just bottle things inside. Um, it eventually
yeah,
explodes.
right. So you wouldn't say that you had any trauma growing up.
Well,
I mean,
I mean,
when I say trauma, I mean
that's a
that.
broad subject.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, for sure.
Defines trauma. I mean, I view. I mean, this is my personal belief.
Yeah,
I view trauma as more major. Um, you know, seeing things you shouldn't see, kind of thing. But no, I would say fairly normal. No major traumas except for some deaths as a young kid in the family. That was pretty tough, but other than that, that was like kind of my main trauma as a kid.
yeah. But you also didn't have a cheering section, is what it sounds like, right? Because I mean, and
No.
I'm, and this is, you say your father is providing for the family, and that's really how, like you said, normal when
Hmm.
our era grew up with fathers who worked, and that was their job, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and I think now looking back, I mean, that I appreciate everything. I'm grateful for everything I had. Um, I'm just taking an opportunity now to take a different direction for my family that um, I don't I think we could all make a little change in our lives to make things better, and that's where I'm at right now.
yeah, for sure. So, but that going back to what you said about not having those ways to manage or deal with stress or cope with things that are coming at you, now you get into the fire service and you have a trauma moment or you have multiple. Was there
Hmm.
one,
No,
or
so
would
for
you
me,
say multiple?
for me it was multiple, and like it was kind of weird. Well, I don't say weird, but I didn't realize I had a problem, right?
Right.
I just thought like, because I see, buddies that are struggling, right, back then, and I'm like, oh, this is just normal, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, not sleeping at night is normal. Like, hearing a rooster like makes you freak out inside, and your heart racing, and you're sweating, and what the hell, like. So for me, it was like multiple uh, traumatic things, like some of, like I had recurring dreams about certain calls. Um, and so it was just, yeah, it was more of a multiple, like an adding up over the years, and then finally it was just like, can't
Yeah.
you can't do this on your own, brother. You got
Yeah.
to ask
And
for help.
right. And so you talked about getting to a dark place where you are isolating. Are you drinking at this point? Any substance abuse stuff or not?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was definitely drinking at that time, and looking back, probably, using that as a coping mechanism, right? Because unfortunately, we're not taught in the fire service, which it's, or in life, we're not taught how to properly cope with these feelings that you're having, or lack of feelings. In my case, of just suppressing feelings. Um, so yeah, I mean, I drank, and I didn't obviously think it was an issue, right? I don't think anybody does, but looking back, yeah, I mean, I definitely used drinking as a crutch, and you look in the fire service in general, like everything revolves around drinking. Like you think about,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and so my question
Union
is, do
gathering,
we?
galas. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a social thing. Yeah, but I also see it as a lot of brothers and sisters coping for what they're struggling with too, and don't realize it like I was. Um, so yeah, it was a rough period there. I had a
And
couple of them.
yeah. And was there somebody that said, that noticed it, and said,
So
hey,
that so that's the thing. I was very good. So um, I was very good at putting on this persona of happy and funny, and trying to keep any attention, because the last thing you want to do is be a burden on anybody, um,
mm,
which I think is the hardest thing with like depression, PTSD, is you feel like you're a burden. Um, and so, I didn't want my buddies to know that like I'm weak, right? Because at the moment now I don't view
yeah,
it as weakness, but at that moment is like, but they're not, they don't need to know this stuff. Like they don't need to know I'm struggling. Everybody needs to know I'm perfect, because we're raised in a society that, in my opinion, we're raised in a society that says, everything's great all the time. Like, let's not talk about the things that are hard. And so I just kind of lived that persona. And, over the years, I just couldn't keep up with it, right? I couldn't keep the show on of being happy, um, of not struggling at home. Ended up at the very end using work as my escape, to be, because if I'm at home, then my wife and kids see I'm screwed up. But if I'm at work, I can go hide in my room and say I'm taking a nap, which I always got a bunch of shit. Sorry about that. I have bad mouth. A bunch of shit for taking naps, because it's like everybody's like, oh, Douglas is off napping again. It's like, no, Douglas is off in his room, really, really sad and really struggling. And, again, you don't want that burden on your crew, because at the end of the day, they need to be able to rely on me. And so I had to save my energy to be that guy when the moment was needed. And yeah, it was hard.
so you ended up being the one that was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And right. So,
Yeah.
um, so during, and you guys didn't have a peer support program,
No, so
or
we do at
you
West
do?
Pierce. Yeah, West Pierce. I can't say better things about their peer support program, and the support I've gotten from them has been, um, it's been touching, man. It's I'm really impressed with what they're doing. I feel they're out in the front. with this stuff, and yeah, that was a huge, like opening up to my captain, who is a peer support. I mean, he knows a lot about me, right? Like
Yeah.
but having that ability to like go to somebody and be like, dude, today's a bad day, Cap. Like, I'm not doing good. And him being like, take it easy. I got you. You know, it's
Yes.
like having
Yes.
that ability is what the difference peer support has done.
Yeah.
With
So
somebody you
it,
trust.
yeah, right. So it sounds like it took a moment for you to go, man, I can't do this. Having the courage to go and tell somebody, and also having somebody that you knew in the peer support program that would listen to you, that he was a
For
safe
sure.
spot. Man,
Yep.
that's awesome, man. And whew, yeah,
It's good stuff.
yeah, it's a lot, man. But it's not. I mean, this is a thing that it has to change in our culture. I see it changing a lot in the fire service in our
Mm-hmm.
department. Um, the first meeting that me and my partner ever had in teaching people about peer support, we were 5 minutes in, and got this crusty old dude looking at his watch, and he's like, he truly looked up at me and goes, "Are we a bunch of fucking pussies? Let's just
Yeah.
lace up your bootstraps. Let's go." And now that same guy will call me when somebody's grandma has died or somebody's dog. I'm not exaggerating. When somebody's grandma or dog dies,
Mm-hmm.
or hey man, this guy just he seems a little bit off. You want to just check in. Um, it has gone a, it has gone further than just critical incidents and these major calls, because as you know, we're finding that
Mm-hmm.
it's not all often even just one call. It is
No, I would say it's more a culmination of stuff than it is just one call.
right.
For
So now
me, I
you
mean, for me
yeah,
specifically.
so now you got a whole department looking after guys, and having somebody to check in. And so I'm super happy to hear that your department had an avenue for you.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take the plunge and you go to Deer Hollow, which
Mm-hmm.
we have seen some gentlemen through as well. So you came out with
Phenomenal experience for me. Yeah.
some tools.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like having something, like I wear this I don't know if you can see it, but this silly brace, right? Like this is a tool I got there. Like if I'm starting to feel like I'm like getting super anxious or overwhelmed, I just kind of spin that between my fingers and kind of take a moment to stop and smell the air or look at something and be grateful and remind myself like, okay, you're here, like everything's good, you're going to be fine, like working through those things versus letting it build up over time and then exploding. And so yeah, I learned a lot of really good tools there. I think for me, like the biggest things that I really um, took from there would be like vulnerability. You use that word like vulnerable or pussies or whatever you want to call it, right? I think vulnerability takes more courage than it does to run away from it,
Oh,
because you're having to face your shit in the mirror and say, "Look at what you're doing.
y-
You're not functioning."
yeah,
And being vulnerable to then go tell somebody like. But
yeah,
I think it's those acts of courage, those acts of vulnerability like that, are what's going to make the change. Because the more people that do it, just like you have that crusty captain, I have people that now call me because I've been very open in leaving, and there's always an open, a phone call away. You got to download WhatsApp to get a hold of me, but in Costa Rica. But I've had people that you would never have thought had problems that I was even like, what, like this
right. Oh,
person's
yeah,
struggling, like brother, sister, I got you. Like, I know what you're going through. It's going to be okay. And at the end of the day, though, um, it comes down to oneself making the choice. Just like it sounds like your crusty guy made the choice, personal decision that okay, maybe this isn't a bunch of pussies. Maybe this is something, and let's look out for each other. If we're truly a family, a real family should be looking out for each other. And I'm really proud. It sounds like your organization's doing the same thing, and ours did too, of recognizing those little signs. The guy that goes, or gal that goes to the room,
Yeah.
there's a problem with that person. I'm telling you right now. That's not
Yes.
normal behavior
Right.
and
Yes.
isolating themselves. So those are just like keying in on little things like that can really maybe prevent somebody from getting to the points that I did. So, yeah,
Yeah. Did you get in that point? Did you get to suicidalities? Any ideations? Any of
for
that?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I struggled with that suicidal ideation for quite a few years. Um, for me, and it was like, I don't know, 2018, 2019. We had like I was really struggling, like bad. Like not sleeping. I hadn't slept in like 2 days because like I was too afraid to go to sleep because I had this like recurring nightmare. And so I'd keep myself up. And so we go to this fantasy football draft, we're hanging out, we're drinking, I'm sad. Hey, nobody recognizes me, right? Because I'm having to keep this like front on. And like
Yeah.
deep down inside, I'm screaming, dude, I'm hurting. Like somebody help me, like somebody recognize that I'm hurting, but all I know how to do is put on this mask, right? So I had like a fallout with one of my best friends. I don't even remember exactly what it was, and I was like, see, nobody cares. Like in my head, it just like the switch went off. Like, see, nobody cares. It's time. And I'd been thinking about killing myself for a while. So I left the fantasy draft, went home. I was living in my best friend's basement at the time while we were building our house next door, and I had my pistol out in our little bow shop, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna go kill myself. So, I mean, I was crying at this point, right? Like walking up the driveway. This is at night, and I'm not personally like a religious person, you know, but I mean, somebody was definitely looking out for me because somehow his wife had heard me crying, had let Christina, my wife, know. And at that point, she had come out as I was like loading up my magazine to cock one back. And I mean, it was it, like for me. Um, sorry, that's hard talking about, but glad I never did it. Um, and so then from there, I'm like, okay, I need to go get help. So then I started doing like therapy and did that for like a year. And then that's when I ended up going to Deer Hall. It just, the reality is for anybody watching this, therapy is great, but it's not the solution.
I missed that part. Did you say talk therapy?
Talk therapy specifically, yeah, like not you got one thing I really that helped me a lot, and everybody's different, but what helped me a lot for Deer Hollow was that I learned these skills of I mean, it was some talk therapy with it, but there was more modalities of, whether it's journaling or there's other avenues you can take to like work through these emotions and traumas and stuff. And so for me, it really helped. Like, okay, let's get in there. I think I'm a firefighter deep at heart always, right? We're problem solvers. Like, okay, there's a problem, let's go fix it. Like,
Adapt and overcome, brother.
exactly. And so I learned you learn a lot more tools through other therapy than just sitting and talking to somebody, saying things are hard, which is very good to have that person. Don't get me wrong, but you're not going to get rid of your problems unless you directly attack it through other forms of whether it be journaling or CBT, CPT. There's a bunch of different other therapy modalities that had helped me a lot to get to where I'm at today of being able to struggle and still function.
Yeah. So you still do struggle off and on.
Yeah, I mean, like June for me. So for me, it's very the calls that do stick out in my head that like haunt me it's very cyclical, right? Like so, like around that time, like so June, end of June, beginning of July is really hard. like October, like Halloween and like Christmas time. Like those are like those times I kind of like go in these, you know, because I start to think about it and then I let my mind go, and then I stop sleeping. You know, I'm not doing the things I should be to take care of myself. So yeah, I mean, June was a really hard month for me, just because I mean, you can't run from your problems, right? Like no matter where you go, you're not gonna fix it until you actually address it. Um, just so happens for me in Costa Rica is a very good spot to be able to work through my stuff, because like a great example is like I'm horrible at like calling people or getting a hold of anybody. Again, it comes down to a burden thing, right? Like my mom never calls me. It's like a weird family trait, right? I think.
Right.
And I don't know what that is, but so like I don't like to call people or do my own thing. But that's like I have to go against what feels good, what I've realized, to be able to get better. Like you got to face it like head on. It's it's important that you got to feel it, you know, and it's those feelings that we suppress from all the stuff we go through that what we need to let out.
Yeah, and so I know that when guys come back from Deer Hollow, they have this plethora of tools, and
Mm-hmm.
they have an understanding like you do of yourself, the tools that will get you back on track.
Mm-hmm.
What are the tools that you implement most frequently during those times? So when June comes around or October comes around,
Yeah.
do you prepare for it, or when you're in it, what does that look like?
Honestly, I was a little surprised by this June. I thought I had been doing pretty good. Um, I mean, for me, like what works really well is like just journaling about how I feel. And you know, I showed you my bracelet that I have. You know, some kind of um, way to bring yourself back to the present, right? Because the problem is we get so wrapped up in our thoughts that we're worrying about the future and what happened yesterday, and when all you need to worry about right now is yourself and today in the present. And so it just kind of brings you back to that present. So then you can start using other tools, like the journaling, or another one that works for me is like gratitude. Goes a long way. Like so, and I imagine we'll get to Costa Rica, but I won't go too deep into that on a tangent. But so we have a farm down there. So I'm learning permaculture right now, and we have, I don't know, 40 different varieties of fruits and whatnot. So I've found for me, is just getting out in nature is a really good cure, and just like looking around me and just being grateful for everything that I have. And you know, as weird as it sounds, like grateful for this like plant to like grow a new leaf, or you know, just look at these little
Yeah.
things of to remind yourself that like life is beautiful and life is amazing, and you know, don't waste it.
Yeah. Man, and how grounding it is too. I mean, to be on
For
that
sure.
earth, I imagine.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's super. It's a pretty laid back country. Like I kind of went on a tangent before, but like down there, like you know, with my calling issue, like or saying you're gonna show up somewhere, like people just don't show up. Like they'll be like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there tomorrow. They say mañana, right? So you know, mañana could mean tomorrow or it could mean next week. You just gotta go with it, right? Like so for me, it's like, oh yeah, let's you know, like some of the friends I made down there, like yeah, let's hang out tomorrow, and it's like no, I'm having a shitty day, so I can just not show up and it'll be like totally acceptable. You know, like we're in the States, everybody will be like, what's wrong with that guy? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's a totally different culture, but yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Right. That dick. So yeah, before we get into your time at Costa Rica and
Mm-hmm.
where you're at, sorry about that. I thought I turned off all notifications, but it's right in my ear. Um, your family, how was your relationship with your wife before you got help?
That was horrible. and we're still working through stuff today that from that period of time. Um, you look at the fire service in general, we have, and police, military, there's a high rate of divorce. Um, it's it's hard on families, and it's even harder when you're not taking care of yourself, so you can't take care of them. And um, I have a pretty amazing wife that's been like super supportive, and I feel very grateful to have her, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today for her help. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was not healthy, right? Because I'm not communicating, A, which is a horrible thing. B, I'm sitting in my room all day when I'm at home, or I'm avoiding any form of interaction with people because I have zero reserve to function. So it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. And how old are your kids right now?
So I got two kids. I got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. 9-year-old's
Yeah.
a girl.
9-year-old's a boy. Sorry. I
Okay.
guess that was, yeah.
9-year-old. Yeah. You don't have to be chronological here, man. I'll dig it. You're fine. So, 9-year-old boy, 6-year-old daughter.
Mhm.
So they were really young when you were going through it.
Yeah, which kind of hurts even worse, because those are those like big, um, developmental years for their life, and they didn't see me of where they good example for as a father of what I would want them to be when they're older. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is to look back on that and say, dude, what or how crappy of a dad were you, right? Like, you wouldn't go play with your kids, you'd rather sit in your room. But then I have to stop myself when I get like that, because I got to remind myself, you cannot change the past. You're going to be held accountable, right? As a father, for maybe not being there or being present. And it's important to figure out, what am I going to do today to be a good dad? Um, what what little thing can I do today different that will be present for today? And
Yeah.
so that's what I try to. And I'm not an expert at it by any means. I fail all the time. Everybody fails, right? I think the biggest learning experiences in my life have come from failure, and to not be afraid of it and try to keep yourself in that present moment is so imperative for your relationship, with your spouse, or your kids or family or friends.
Right.
It's really important.
Yeah, and then after that failure, where do you go from that? That really talks about our character more than the failure itself, correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really easy to keep doing what's easy.
Yeah.
If we just stay in our comfortable lives, we see no growth as a person. We see no growth as a father. We see no growth as a husband or as a professional. You think about, like, you were a teacher, right? Before
Yeah.
you got in the fire service, and you took a risk of going away from something that was comfortable to the unknown, and you let yourself be vulnerable. So I challenge people to, vulnerabilities you take within your career, take them within yourself. Be vulnerable to yourself, and see what that does to your life. I think it can go a long ways.
Yeah. Well, let's get to Costa Rica, Andrew, and his family, and where you're at now, what the interactions with your family look like, what your life looks like, what your goals are. You talked about, working on a new career path. You also talked about not blaming your dad, but also now wanting to just seeing a new way of being a father.
Hmm.
And so you can walk through that any way that you want. I just want to hear about Costa Rica, Andrew.
Yeah, so I think, a lot of people thought we were crazy when we said we were going to do this. Um, but it kind of goes on like so many different levels, right? It's not just about me, right? First of all, I mean, just on the surface, right? Let's talk about everything we like to talk about in America. That's money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm making really good money as a firefighter at the time, right? So I'm having to walk away from really good money where my wife was, I was lucky enough to have a wife that was able to stay at home, which most people don't allow. I was able to have free health care through my department, which most people don't have. I'm now realizing how ungrateful at the moment I was of all those things that I was entitled to through my profession that I don't have now. So a big, not a big part, but I would say a part of our decision going down there was just affordability, right? Like, if my wife wants to continue to be a stay-at-home mom, it's just not doable in the United States anymore on me going back to an entry-level job and making entry-level wages. So we had the expenses, healthcare, obviously, I got a shock when I was told it was going to be $2,400 a month if I wanted to continue my healthcare. I'm like, dude, like, how do people afford this? So down there, we're able to get residency and get healthcare at least to have that while I'm focusing on going into a new career. So it's because so you have that financial aspect, but then you also have the cultural aspect of it. Like I said, talked about before, it's pretty laid back. It's a different way of living. Things are more simple. Possessions aren't more important. I think so our landlord, I call him my tata, which means in Costa Rica, it's Spanish for like dad, right? Or like papa, tata. So he's like my adopted father down there, and helps us out with, if we need help translating for certain things or, he's just an amazing person. And so he brought us into our family because he talked about his time in Mississippi State when he was in graduate school there, about how people brought him in. And so he said this is his opportunity to give back. So he's taught us a lot about their culture. And he says it best. He says, God, family, job. That is how Costa Ricans view their life. For me, I personally replace God with faith in something other than oneself, right? Having a faith, getting away from that like inner ego of, I'm what the world revolves around, or it's me, and having faith in something else has been tremendous for me personally. And then, number two is that family is making that more important. That is more important than money, than a job. You need those things, but we see people who are struggling, who can't put food on the table, who are having to beg in the streets. We see that in America right now, but what are we doing for them? But these people are still happy. So how is that? And I think it boils down to their philosophy of life of God, family, and job. You take care of those first two things, and the third thing will eventually come, and you'll find your way. But yeah, it's just that whole culture change was a really good process for myself, and it's been really good for our kids. Like, they've really enjoyed. It was a struggle at first because you don't have all the conveniences that you have in the United States, like Amazon. Thank God we don't have Amazon down there. You should see her. I'm visiting Washington State right now, and our room's full of like Amazon purchases. I'm like, ugh, I don't miss Amazon.
Yeah.
So it's those it just teaches you to slow down and appreciate life more down there. This is kind of their way of living. They say pura vida, which is like pure life would be like the direct translation, right? Like, it's just live life, appreciate nature, appreciate things around you, appreciate your neighbor. It's just been a really good cultural experience for me and my kids. So
Can you say that expression again? What is it? How do they?
So we would say in English, it would sound like pura vida, Ravida, pure life. So that's their
Pura
philosophy. Vida. Yeah, I mean, it's for you can use pura vida for everything, but it's like, so like you'll be like, oh, ¿cómo está? Like, hey, how's it going? And they'll be like, pura vida, and it's like that's the expression for everything, right? it's just their way of life, it's
Yeah,
different.
that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
did you bring to your wife Costa Rica, or did she bring that to you? How did that come
So,
about?
so my, so it's funny. My wife, in I think she was like 16 or something like that. She went down to Costa Rica for school.
Okay.
And so she wrote in her journal, like, one day I want to live in Costa Rica. And
Oh,
like, yeah. So she, about 12 or 13 years ago, introduced me to, we traveled to Nicaragua. I'd never been out of the US. I would say back then I was fairly ignorant, as to what was going on in the world. And when I went down to Nicaragua, I fell in love with Central America, just the people alone. Um, it's it's just a different philosophy of life, and Nicaragua especially, like seeing people suffer, like unimaginable. I mean, we see suffering in the United States, for sure, but I mean, this is like a whole nother level of suffering. But to see a smile on their face, and to see them gather as a family and invite you in for a meal when they have hardly any money, but they're willing to sacrifice that for you as a guest. It was really special. So that kind of changed me. And then so we had just randomly like, oh, let's move to Costa Rica. And this is during a period of time where I hadn't fully said I was going to be done, but in my own head,
you were
subconsciously, I
done.
was done. And so, like, yeah, we're planning it, and I'm like trying to figure. I picked all my Kelly days around, like, moving and being able to fly, and because we have that flexibility at my department, right?
Yeah.
In reality, I was done, right? Like, I couldn't do it anymore. Um, yeah, I remember like my first call back from Deer Hollow. I like rushed back to work, and it was this nursing home, and this dude was choking on a hot dog, like cardiac arrest choking.
Mm.
And I like got there, and I'm like paused. I'm like, what? I can't. I'm not the medic I used to be, right? Because I put off this persona of this like cocky medic, right? It was
Oh,
which a lot of us do. You know how we are as
I
princesses.
do know.
Um, and
Near
I think
gods.
well, you know what? You know why why the fire service got medics, right?
Why is that?
Well, because everybody looks at firefighters as their heroes, so firefighters need heroes too. So
Yeah,
made
that's
sure
right.
that you guys had your heroes. But yeah, no. So like it was like such a shock to the system, and like that was kind of like I think the beginning of the end for me, where I'm like, dude, I mean, normally I would jump in there and be like, throw my you know laryngoscope in there, pull it out, no big deal. But I like froze. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I can't function. Like,
Mm.
and so being able, that was kind of like the beginning moments of realizing like I don't think I can do this anymore, which was really hard. But so we played in Costa Rica, and um, then I finally said enough was enough, and say September of last year was my last day I worked. So I made it about 9 months out of Deer Hollow, and or less than that, and then just said, no, time to move on. So it sounds really easy, but it wasn't that easy.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that's a huge change, man.
Yeah,
From a really good job with really good time off, benefits. You're in the States, living that life, and then whew, drop everything, go to a whole new way of life. And
yeah.
and what is your interaction with your kids like right now?
I would say I have a better connection ever than I've had with them. I've really worked on with my kids like emotion like regulation stuff like that, like of just like, okay, like let's talk about you say you're mad. Okay, I believe you're mad. Let's dig into that more. Like what is making you mad? Oh, you're actually really sad because men specifically, tend to use anger as our number one emotion, right? Like it's like, you know, you got the guys at work, it's all tough and well, yeah, nothing scares me. And they're just, yeah, those guys, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
Really, let's break that down a little bit. That's like, there's more to that, right? There's
Yes.
more to just anger.
Yeah. And
Joy.
if I can
There's all
interject,
kinds of different. Yeah, go for it.
yeah. So on my way to dropping my 12-year-old off at middle school, you know, he knew I was coming to a podcast, and you know, somewhat of what we were going to be talking about and the road I was wanting to go down, and we started talking about emotions, and so the point is that we brought up that anger, that because I said, hey, what is the one emotion that you feel like men are good at expressing, or the only emotion that they show? And he's 12. Anger. No, I mean, not even a thought. And so we,
Yep.
you know, it's true, and it's permeating our youth as well. So I mean, it's so awesome to hear that you are talking about emotions. I interviewed a doctor of psychology a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up going right there. Like that's what these kids need. They need to know that they need to be able to. I mean, they have emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds. I was about to say they need to know it's okay to have emotions. Well, it doesn't matter if you think it's okay or not, because you have emotions. Now, what do you do with them? How do you acknowledge them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So,
it's how to have healthy outlets for your emotions, right?
yeah, right.
You know, I used anger a lot in the past, and it didn't get me anywhere, right? And like being like, you know, and I think when you talk about like for men, it's difficult to talk about emotions, right? Well, especially with our kids, because you want to be this strong, tough person. And I challenge people to really try talking about it, like see what happens. What's it going to hurt if you do that? Because you're going to show your kids still look up to you as this tough dad or whatever persona you want them to, but you're really giving them a gift of what emotions are and what they feel like. And you know, like for me, like I can feel something coming on in my chest. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel like anxious right now, like and I still try, you know, you can have those emotions and not show it. That's totally fine. You know, I used to always tell my paramedic students, like, you need to learn how to be like a duck, which is like on the surface on a call, when stuff's hitting the fan, you need to be the one that's leading everybody else and staying calm on the surface, but you sure as hell can be paddling underwater as hard as you want, right? But you're going to look graceful on the surface. But it's then taking those emotions that you're feeling inside of you during that moment and then finding a healthy release for them, so it doesn't become anger as the emotion that you've now built up from that. Has been super helpful.
Yeah. And so what would it, you know, let's walk through just a couple things that maybe emotions that kids would feel. So if your kids are anything like mine, every once in a while they just they're ticked off, and they don't regulate emotions well. I'm 44. I sure as hell don't
Yeah.
manage my emotions very well all the time. So, but what does that look like? What is your boy's name?
Brody.
So when Brody's just, you know, you can tell he's just ticked off. I mean, what is that? Where do you go? What does that conversation look like?
I mean, you got to get down on their level, right? Like, I think like kind of like closing yourself off a little bit, not being this big, you know, like stop, you know, you need to relax. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I still struggle. I have my moments of not being perfect. But I try to like just sit next to him and be like, what's going on? Like, you seem mad right now. Okay, yeah, I'm mad. Okay. Well, let's talk about it. Like, what are you mad about? Let's get to the root problem. We can solve it together, or you can solve it on your own. And so just sitting there and talking about like how's your body feeling? How, like, you're clenching your fists right now. Like, you seem like really tense. Like, is everything like, is there something else going on? Are you frustrated about something? Are you, going through all that? So just talking and being at their level, and then just breaking it down of simple things of, okay, well, so you really ended up, you're sad that you couldn't do this, which is totally okay. Like, to feel that way. And you need to find, instead of getting angry about it and lashing out or doing something that would be negative, you could have, come and found me, or giving them options of letting them make the decision, and kind of give him that freedom. Like at 9, he's starting to get to that point where he likes that, like, freedom. I imagine your 12-year-old likes to make his own decisions, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you work with them to give them options, to be able to pick their path.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my process when that kind of stuff happens. And I wish it like happened perfectly like that every time. It doesn't, but
Right.
it's the point is that you try, right? The
Yeah.
point is that you break down from your ways that you would normally respond, and you try something different.
Yeah.
And that's worked for him pretty well.
Yeah. I have a 9-year-old boy as well. And what he likes to, if he gets angry,
Mm-hmm.
he does not want to be approached. And so I'll go down that road like, hey, bud, what's up? I see you're kind of angry. Like, leave me alone, or he'll just walk off and he wants space. Now, I am the dad that has, my natural instinct is to chase you down and let's hammer this out. Let's walk through
Yeah.
it. I'm in tune with your emotions, buddy. Trust me. But really, I think that I'm not always, because I'm
No,
not,
that's
right? Because I'm
exactly.
trying to
Every kid's different. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
so thankfully, I have such a beautiful wife who sees this. So my son, my 9-year-old, told me I'm mean. He's like, you're mean, and I'm like, all right. Well, if you're gonna tell me I'm mean, why? What is it? What was mean? What did I do that was mean? Doesn't want to talk about. Well, if you're gonna say that I'm mean, you also have to come with. You got to hold that responsibility to tell me why. And he's not. He's not in there. He's not going to do it. He's stonewalling me, and I'm not yelling at him. I'm not being angry. Although inside I'm the duck paddling under. There's that duck paddling underneath. I'm trying to be smooth on the surface, right? But my wife is like, no, you're not fooling anybody. I see those feet moving. So she comes over and like, hey, what would it look like if you just said, hey, bud, I would really like to talk to you about this. How about we talk about it later and walk away, because this is going nowhere. And it helps to have somebody derail you, because, even though I'm trying to be emotionally involved, I'm just I can just create such a wreck with how I handle things, man, and just kind of bulldozing in there, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's the firefighter in you, right? It's the fixer, right? You want to fix it.
Yeah.
Which and I agree with your wife. I mean, like, I think it depends on the kid, on the situation. Like, sometimes space is the best thing you can give, because people need that, for you to hold that space for them, right? Let them feel what they're feeling. Hold that space for them. You still got to. It doesn't mean the problem is going to go away. You can talk about it later, but just holding that space can go a long ways for anybody. When they're struggling. I know that I'm kind of the same way as your son, right? It's like, back off, like, let me get through my stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also running to where it's safe for me.
Mm.
So it's having that person like my wife who can, like, be like, hey, like, we'll talk about it later, but readdress it later, and not just let me stay in that space.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, everybody's different, right? And you just got to figure out what works in a healthy way.
Yeah. Right. And so now, how your time with your wife right now? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you had alluded to or said that you're still working through stuff, but
Yeah.
but do you feel like you're on the positive side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any relationship, right? Like our biggest failures are communication. Like communication, whether it's, I think about like my times from the union, right? Of like things I could have messaged a message differently,
Hmm.
communicated more effectively. I think of the job, right? Like our chiefs, like the messages sometimes they send out to the people on the lines, like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, so it's being able to like work through that communication challenge is really hard in any relationship. And I think it's like an evolving thing that like continuously has to change. I kind of feel bad for my wife now because like, I'm like, okay, like you're making me feel this way right now. Like, stop. Like, we can talk about this later, but you're making me feel this way. And she's like, well, who the hell is this guy? Like, he's not just going to be an asshole anymore. He's going to like tell me how he feels. Like,
Right.
so like taking that change it's been different. So it's been like working through that. But yeah, I mean, I for every step back we take two steps forward. And so that's been pretty awesome.
Do you guys are you able to get out on dates over there?
Dude, nah, not as much. I
Much?
mean, no, we have some like really close friends that would do it. It's just, I mean, we need to do more like effort to go and do that. It's just we don't have like a huge like support network as far as like people we would trust to like watch our kids,
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to do that. So actually tonight we're going on a date, so
That.
I'm gonna have to go get my hair cut and look sharp because it's the first one in a while. So
That a boy. That
yeah,
boy.
so I'm
That's
excited. So we had family. My mother-in-law is gonna watch the kids. So
yeah. So
yeah,
hey, we're like at it just over an hour, and so I want to be mindful of time. But I have just a couple more
yeah,
questions. Is that cool? Um, so you're a fisherman, right?
die hard. Yeah,
Yeah. Did
but
you
I
do
left
some?
it for a long time.
Now, did you do some guiding for a while?
No, not professional guiding.
No.
No,
Okay.
no. I
Because I
mean
had seen some
I
pretty
boat.
cool spots that you had went to. It looked like.
Yeah, I mean, I had a drift boat, which is like I had two different boats. So fishing for me was fishing saved my life, honestly. Um, One of my best friend John and good friend Andy. Um, I was at another like suicidal point in my life, right? And I had been in bed for a while. Like my wife had reached out to them. This is after Deer Hollow, right? Or no, that was before. Either way, it doesn't matter. My wife had reached out to them, and they like drugged me out of the house to take me fishing, and I caught this beautiful steelhead, and like that was like getting me out into that environment, the things that I had been avoiding doing, of fishing, hunting, the things I love. Um, like that saved my life. Like that,
Yeah.
those guys and that fish saved my life because I was like really coming up with plans, and yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
good.
No, that's not good. Um, do you fish out there in Costa
Not
Rica?
as much. When I mean, it's just a matter of time. Like right now, like basically my days revolve around like in the morning going to the farm and working in the farm before it gets like too hot around like 10, and then from like 10 to like 2ish, I'm studying for computer stuff for what I want to go into until I can get into school. I'm waiting. Luckily, in Washington State, we have really good legislation that has helped me transition into a new career. So I'm going to get some help retraining, get education paid for and whatnot. So that's a stress off my plate. But so in the meantime, while I'm waiting on that whole bureaucracy and process to go through, I've been studying what I want to do and teaching myself. So I don't have like a ton of, like with the week. So it's like comes to the weekend and, I want to do things with my kids, but I bring my fishing pole a lot with me. And like if we'll be at like the beach or something, I'll like sneak out like with the kids and like catch little fish and stuff. But I've only been on like one trip. I'd like to go on more, but
Okay.
one
Are
official trip.
are you homeschooling your kids? Do you have a school that they're going to?
So they go to a bilingual school. So
Okay.
since we're not residents, they can't go into the public education system. But there's multiple bilingual schools. So, certain subjects are like English is taught in like math and science, and everything else is in Spanish. Um, so that's been really, really cool for them of getting to know another culture, and hearing my daughter come home from school and like having like an accent, that's like,
Yeah.
it's been cool. It's a really, really great community we're in.
Yeah. And so real quick, walk me through a typical day for you. You started on a little bit of it, but
Yeah, so I mean, so like I said, like we have about 3 acres of, um, so we live up in the mountains in Costa Rica. We don't live on the beach, and so we have about 3 acres. It's like we just planted like another 15 varieties of 15, something like that, of different species of like bananas and stuff, and so there's a lot of work that has to go on. I can't do it all by myself. Like we have a guy that worked on the property before. So I go in the morning, drop kids off at school. Um, it's kind of my way of exercising too, right? You're hauling around sacks of dirt, and um, so yeah, I go and work at the farm, and we're actually building a house there right now, and some rental units down below that my wife's gonna. That's kind of gonna be her job, is to run that. Um, and yeah, so I work on the farm, climb up mountains. Um, so this guy, the local guy that works there, right? Like, oh, we got to go fix the water system. I'm like, oh, okay, where are we going? He like points up the mountain. He's like, we're going up there, and I'm like, we're going where? Like, okay, I'm coming with you. So he gets me to this like waterfall, and he's like, all right, we got to climb. And this is all in Spanish, right? He speaks no English. I'm like, we're climbing like right here, and he's like, yeah, we're climbing right here, and like we climb up this thing. I get to the top. I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then we go like walk over this like, you know, big log that's over the river, and I like step on like this branch, fall in the water, like trapped by this log, and like this guy comes back, like rescues me. My phone's like everywhere, and so like we had more stuff to do. He's like, "You just stay here, man. You don't need to go with me anymore."
Yes.
So I got put in timeout. But yeah, so that my day is like working around the farm in the morning. Um, it's like my ultimate goal with that is I had a buddy down there like randomly took me to this like permaculture farm, and they have like what's called a food forest, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, and the owners that we got from before kind of followed the same principles of permaculture, and so I kind of started getting into that. So we planted more species, and so the goal is the upper half of our property is going to be like a fruit farm. Then it's our house, and then the lower half is like rentals for people to come and stay and learn about permaculture or live the low key farm life, pick your own fruits and vegetables and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my day in the morning, and then like I said, like so I'm my focus like career wise. I know I want to do something in tech. I've been really nerding out into like different coding languages and that kind of stuff, but I'm really drawn. Like I still have this like this desire and this like drive to like give back to like a community. So I want to focus on like cybersecurity. So specifically where we're at, they've been struggling with cyber attacks, stuff like that. And United States struggles as well. And there's, it's a decent career field to get into. So yeah, I've been focusing on like cybersecurity, future. It's a pretty broad subject, but when I go back, I'm talking to my Tata Oscar about there's like no form of education down there about it. It's very minimal. Like people don't understand. Like don't click on links. Don't do this. Right. So
Mm.
of trying to figure out a way of like providing education for locals so that they can be protected and not have their personal information and money stolen. So
Dang, man,
those are my days.
yes, man, and you are a great human being, brother. I mean, it just,
I don't know about that. I've had my struggles, but
yeah,
I just I don't know. I feel like if we all do one little thing good for somebody else, um, the world could be a different place. So I just try to help wherever I can. So
yeah. So you basically have, you'll end up having like four different jobs. You'll be renting, you'll be running a permaculture farm.
I told Christina, I said I want nothing to do with renting. Like we rented out our house before we left, and we ended up selling it. But yeah, I don't want to do that. Like I'm gonna focus. I told her, I'm like, you do that stuff. I'll focus on like cutting grass and like planting plants and that kind of stuff, because that's like really good therapy in itself. Like
Yeah,
just getting out there and you're having a hard day, like work through it. And
yeah.
yeah,
And did you have any agricultural experience or
no,
motivation for?
no, no. I mean, basic. So like kind of my entire life, I've kind of like had to like teach myself how to be good at whatever I do.
Yeah,
Um, I kind of talked about, like, won't get too deep, but like as a kid, like I kind of learned to survive, right? And so I just I went to the farm, learned about it, and then now like I tried to listen to whatever Flacco, which means skinny. So I joke my name's Gordo, which is fat. Um, and so like he teaches me a ton, and it's just like his principles of like how they've been farming for years, which is different than the U.S. of like monoculture, where you basically have rows of corn. Like that doesn't happen. Like corn is mixed throughout your property, maybe, versus just one product. So I just follow him around, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And my Spanish has gotten a lot better too. So it's been a challenge, but also fun.
yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you
For
coming
sure. Thanks
on.
for having me on.
Yeah, man, and I just, man, it always seems so. It's tough to leave a conversation like this because there's so much. I think there's just so much more to have, of
For
this
sure. Yeah.
conversation. More ways to go. But I'm uh, just very fortunate to have, be able to experience a little bit of what you're going through, and then also be able to have other people that will benefit, people who are struggling, or people who are wanting to know how to raise their boys. And that's my big push is how do we raise the next generation of boys so that when they come into the fire service, or really anything, but
Hmm.
I always use, for me, the fire service, obviously, because that's what we do, in law enforcement, and our military as well, because we end up seeing more than the general population, right? So if we can develop an emotional resilience in boys, give them those, like you're saying, those tools to deal with your emotions, deal with
Hmm.
the things that are coming at you, and learn some coping skills, that when they enter into those fields, they will be hopefully light years ahead of where we were when we entered in. So
Yeah.
I
For
so I
sure.
think that this conversation, I mean, gives me, I learned a lot. I think others will learn a lot, and man,
Always keep learning.
always
That's
keep learning. So,
that's a benefit of life.
well, let me know when you get those rentals going.
Yeah,
I'll,
for sure.
man, I would love to come down and learn about some permaculture, hang out.
For
I
sure.
don't know
Yeah,
if
it's awesome.
I don't know if I want to climb mountains and go across logs
No,
and rivers.
I wouldn't recommend it. It's not. It's sketchy, and there's no form of help. Like you got to help yourself. Like they have ambulances, but it's not like what we think of ambulances. So,
Yeah. All
but
right,
yeah,
brother.
no, Marty, thank you so much. Like that I just want to end it with this. Throughout all of my experience, I've tried to be very transparent about what I'm going through, as a hope that people don't have to go through what I've done. and what I've experienced. And I think if I can give your audience like one piece of advice, is just have hope. Have hope and faith that it will get better, because it can get better. I know you might feel alone right now, and I many times do too, but you're not alone. There's hope. Love life. Beautiful thing.
Man, that's a good way to wrap it up. Well, brother, thank you. I love you, man, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, and if you need anything, anybody needs to talk, I'm always here.
All right. Thank you, my man.
All right, buddy. Later.
Yeah. Later.
See ya.